Very briefly now we discuss the concept of flip-flop triggering, and we say there are three types of flip-flop triggering. And what we are simply asking ourselves is that when does the flip-flop change? And we have seen from the previous lecture that when we apply a clock pulse, that is when the inputs of our gates 3, if you remember, and gate 4 are allowed to change, or the results are transmitted to the rest of the flip-flop. So we normally ask ourselves, does the flip-flop change its state when the clock pulse is rising, when it reaches the top, or when it is going down? And we normally say that a flip-flop is said to be negative edge triggered when the state of the flip-flop changes at this point, when the state of the pulse, of the clock pulse, is changing from or it's falling, or from the top to the going back to 0. And we normally say that such a negative triggered flip-flop is drawn as shown in this table. The key point to note for SR flip-flop is that for negative edge triggered, this input is active row. This is how we represented active row inputs. It's preceded with a circle representing an inverter. Remember, we said an inverter is normally drawn with a circle at its output. So at the input of this clock pulse, there is this circle that represents that it is active row. But in this case, what we are saying is that the symbol we are seeing here or representing the negative triggered flip-flop. And when the flip-flop changes at the rising edge of our pulse, then we say that that flip-flop is positive edge triggered, and the output state changes on the rising edge of the clock pulse. And that kind of flip-flop is represented by this symbol. And what we notice that this is not having the circle that was preceding or negative edge triggered flip-flop. So whenever you see that a clock pulse is not preceded by the circle, that means that is positive edge triggered flip-flop. And finally, when the flip-flop changes, when the clock pulse reaches the maximum, then or during the duration of that clock pulse, then we say that that flip-flop is said to be level triggered, and the output of the flip-flop changes during the time duration that the clock pulse is at its maximum. And that flip-flop is symbolized by this symbol. It has absolutely no this wedge, it's just plain. That means that it's a level triggered flip-flop. So you might be sent such a question to ask you to identify the triggering of a flip-flop with these three different symbols. We say that such a level triggered flip-flop is also called a gated latch.